The fluorescent lights of the grocery store parking lot buzzed overhead like dying wasps as Chloe Evans stared at the formula tin in her hand. $47.99. She had $32 in her checking account and a sleeping infant in the back seat whose next feeding was in less than 2 hours. Her thumb hovered over her phone screen, pride and desperation waging their nightly war in her chest. She'd already texted her sister twice this week. Maya had her own bills, her own life. But Leo's whimper from the car seat made the decision for her. She typed quickly before she could talk herself out of it. Maya, I know I just asked, but I'm short for formula. Can you Venmo 20? I get paid Friday. I'm so sorry. Send. Chloe dropped her head back against the driver's seat, closing her eyes. 26 years old and begging for money to feed her son. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She should be finishing her marketing degree, building a career, giving Leo the life he deserved. Instead, she was cobbling together shifts at a diner and overnight cleaning office buildings, running on 4 hours of sleep and the fumes of a dream that felt further away every single day. Her phone buzzed. She expected Maya's usual response, a heart emoji and a confirmation. What she got instead made her stomach drop through the floorboard. Transfer completed. $5,000. Chloe's hand started shaking so violently she nearly dropped her phone. She stared at the notification, her brain refusing to process what she was seeing. That wasn't Maya. That couldn't be Maya. Maya was a dental hygienist who complained about student loans and split appetizers to save money. She scrolled up to the number she'd texted. 1 digit off, one single, soul-destroying digit different from Maya's number. Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Another text appeared. Is this some new approach? I'll admit, it's more creative than the usual. Chloe's face burned with humiliation, so intense she felt physically ill. He thought she was a scammer, a con artist, someone who deliberately targeted rich strangers with sob stories. Her fingers flew across the screen. I am so sorry. Wrong number. I was texting my sister. I will pay back every cent, I swear. Please send me your Venmo or Cash App or bank info. I'm not a scam. I promise I'm not a scam. She watched the 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again. Her heart hammered against her ribs. $5,000. That was more money than she'd seen in her account since before Leo was born. If this person reported her, thought she was running some kind of fraud. How old is your baby? Chloe blinked at the screen. That wasn't what she'd expected. 3 months. Sir, please, I really need your payment information. I can't keep this money. You need formula. It wasn't a question. Chloe's throat tightened. She typed through the blur in her vision. I'll figure it out. I always do. Please just tell me how to return this. Buy the formula. Consider the rest alone if it makes you feel better. Pay me back when you can. No, absolutely not. Chloe knew how this worked. Nobody gave away $5,000 without strings, without expectations, without the kind of debt that buried you alive. I don't take money from strangers. I don't care if you're Bill Gates himself. Give me your info or I'll contact my bank and reverse it. A longer pause this time. Then, stubborn, principled. Is there a difference? Yes. Another pause. Chloe waited, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ached. Leo stirred in his car seat, making the small mewling sounds that preceded a full meltdown. She had maybe 10 minutes before he woke up screaming. Julian Blackwood. You can find me easily enough if you want to return it. But I meant what I said. Buy the formula first. Julian Blackwood. Even Chloe, who barely had time to scroll social media anymore, recognized that name. Tech mogul. Billionaire investor. The man who'd turned a college dorm room app into a multi-billion-dollar empire before he was 30. His face had been on the cover of Forbes at least twice in the past year alone. She'd just accidentally begged a billionaire for formula money. Chloe wanted to sink through the cracked asphalt of the parking lot and disappear forever. Julian Blackwood had perfected the art of looking engaged in meetings while thinking about something else entirely. It was a survival skill when you sat through 17 hours of quarterly reviews every month. The board members around his penthouse conference table were deep into their analysis of third-quarter projections. Miller was in the middle of his fourth slide about market penetration in Southeast Asia, when Julian's phone vibrated on the mahogany table. He never checked his phone during board meetings. This number was private, reserved for maybe 8 people in the entire world who had legitimate reasons to contact him during locked-door sessions. He glanced down, intending to dismiss whatever it was. "Maya, I know I just asked, but I'm short for formula. Can you Venmo 20? I get paid Friday. I'm so sorry." Julian stared at the message. Miller's voice faded into white noise. This wasn't one of his 8 people. This was what, exactly? The latest evolution of gold digger methodology? He'd seen every approach in the book. The accidental coffee spill at his favorite cafe, the conveniently broken-down car outside his office building, the charity events where beautiful women with empty eyes gravitated to him like moths to a lighthouse. But this was new, vulnerable, desperate, the kind of raw, unpolished plea that triggered something uncomfortable in his chest. Something that felt uncomfortably like the memory of being 11 years old, standing in a food bank line with his mother, trying not to make eye contact with anyone who might recognize them. He found himself typing before he could analyze the impulse. Transfer completed, 5,000. It was a test, a blunt, unmistakable test. If this was a con, the person on the other end would take the money and disappear. Maybe come back in a few weeks with another story, another crisis. That's what they all did eventually. They saw the net worth before they saw the person, and everything that followed was just transaction dressed up as connection. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Julian watched them pulse, feeling something almost like anticipation tighten in his stomach. "I am so sorry. Wrong number. I was texting my sister. I will pay back every cent, I swear. Please send me your Venmo or Cash App or bank info. I'm not a scam. I promise I'm not a scam." Julian's eyebrows rose. He read the message again. The panic was palpable, bleeding through the screen in capital letters and fractured punctuation. This wasn't someone preparing to ghost him with $5,000. This was someone genuinely horrified. Miller was still talking. Something about demographic shifts and strategic partnerships. Julian kept his eyes on his phone, watching those 3 dots appear and disappear as the person on the other end, this accidental wrong number stranger, composed and deleted multiple messages. He typed, "How old is your baby?" It wasn't the question a Mark would expect. It wasn't playing along with the supposed script. If this was an act, it would crack here. They'd pivot, make an excuse, disappear. 3 months. "Sir, please, I really need your payment information. I can't keep this money." "You need formula. I'll figure it out. I always do. Please just tell me how to return this. Buy the formula. Consider the rest a loan if it makes you feel better. Pay me back when you can." He waited. Somewhere in the background, Miller finished his presentation, and Chang started in on operational efficiency metrics. Julian couldn't have repeated a single word if someone held a gun to his head. "I don't take money from strangers. I don't care if you're Bill Gates himself. Give me your info or I'll contact my bank and reverse it." Julian felt something shift in his chest. Something that hadn't moved in years, since back before Caroline had taught him exactly how much his bank account meant compared to everything else about him. This person, this woman, presumably, based on the name Maya, was refusing his money. Actively, almost angrily refusing it. When was the last time anyone had refused him anything? Stubborn, principled. Is there a difference? Yes. He could picture her somehow. Tired eyes and a spine made of steel, sitting in some parking lot somewhere with a baby and empty pockets and a pride that wouldn't bend even when it should. The kind of person who'd pay back $5,000, $20 at a time, if that's what it took. The kind of person who might not want him for his money at all. Julian typed his name, knowing exactly what would happen when she looked it up. Knowing she'd see the Forbes covers, the net worth estimates, the photos from charity galas with forgettable women in couture gowns draped over his arm. Knowing it would probably scare her away, or, worse, transform her into every other person who'd ever looked at him and seen a walking bank account. But he gave her his name anyway. Julian Blackwood. You can find me easily enough if you want to return it. But I meant what I said. Buy the formula first. He waited for the pattern to reveal itself, for the sudden shift into flirtation or manipulation or calculated vulnerability, for her to become like all the others. His phone stayed silent. Miller asked if there were any questions about the Southeast Asian expansion. Julian waved him off without looking up. 5 minutes passed. 10. The board meeting continued around him like background music. Julian stared at his phone screen, at the message thread with a wrong number that had somehow become the most interesting thing to happen to him in months. Finally, after 15 minutes, a new message appeared. Mr. Blackwood, I looked you up. I understand you can afford this better than I can, but that doesn't make it right. I'm going to pay you back. All of it. It might take me a while, but I will. I'm setting up a payment plan of $200 a month starting next week. Please don't argue. This is the only way I can live with myself. I can send you a contract for the payment plan if you want it in writing. I work at Rosie's Diner on 5th and at Mid-City Cleaning Services. You can verify my employment if you need to. My name is Chloe Evans. Julian read the message 3 times. She'd researched him, knew exactly how much $5,000 meant to him, which was essentially nothing, and was still insisting on paying him back $200 at a month. It would take her over 2 years. 2 years of hemorrhaging money she clearly didn't have, just to satisfy a debt she'd never intended to incur. It was the most magnificently, frustratingly, beautifully stubborn thing he'd ever encountered. Julian? Chung's voice cut through his focus. Your thoughts on the Q4 marketing budget? Julian looked up, realizing every person in the room was staring at him. He hadn't heard a single word of whatever presentation had just concluded. Approved, he said. Whatever you recommended. I trust your judgment. 3 board members exchanged glances. Julian never blanket approved anything. He was famous for interrogating every line item, challenging every assumption. His attention to detail had built his empire. Right now, he couldn't have cared less about quarterly projections. He typed, Chloe, no payment plan, but I have a better idea. I'm looking for a consultant, someone to provide feedback on a new app we're developing. It's targeted at working parents, and I need authentic perspective. I'll pay you $200 an hour for your time. Completely legitimate work. Interested? It was barely even a lie. They had a prototype in development for a childcare coordination app. He did need user feedback. The fact that he'd just invented this position 30 seconds ago and would have his team scramble to make it real was irrelevant. He watched the dots appear and disappear. Appear and disappear. Is this because you feel sorry for me? This is because I need your expertise, and I'm willing to pay market rate for it. You have something I need. Real-world experience with the exact demographic we're trying to serve. Are you interested or not? Another long pause. Julian found himself holding his breath. Say yes, he thought. Don't be too proud. Say yes. What exactly would I have to do? Julian smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd felt cross his face in longer than he could remember. Chloe sat in the parking lot of Rosie's Diner at 10:47 p.m., Leo asleep in his car seat, staring at the address Julian Blackwood had sent her. The Blackwood Tower, downtown, tomorrow at 2 p.m. She'd spent the last 3 days Googling everything she could find about Julian Blackwood in the stolen moments between diaper changes and shifts. Tech prodigy, self-made billionaire, 34 years old, never married. Dated but never seriously, according to the gossip sites. Cold, brilliant, ruthlessly efficient. The articles painted him as someone who saw the world in code and calculations, who could predict market trends like other people predicted weather. Not someone who sent $5,000 to a stranger because they needed baby formula. Not someone who offered a broke single mother a consulting job that was almost certainly charity dressed up in corporate language. Chloe wasn't stupid. She knew what this was. A rich man being kind in the only way rich men knew how, by throwing money at problems. In a few weeks, he'd get bored. She'd get a polite email from some assistant saying her consulting services were no longer needed. The job would evaporate like it had never existed. But $200 an hour? Even if it only lasted a month, that was enough to get ahead. Really ahead. Pay down her credit cards, fix her car's transmission. Maybe, and this felt dangerous to even think, maybe save enough to go back to school part-time. She couldn't afford to refuse, but she also couldn't afford to be anybody's charity case or, worse, end up in some situation where a powerful man thought she owed him something she wasn't willing to give. Her phone buzzed. Julian Blackwood, as if summoning him with her thoughts, had made him material. Bring your son tomorrow if you need to. We have a nursing room on the executive floor. My assistant will arrange everything. Chloe's fingers hovered over the screen. She should say thank you. She should be grateful. Instead, she found herself typing. I need to establish some ground rules before tomorrow. The response came immediately. I'm listening. Chloe took a breath and committed. 1. This is a professional arrangement. I work, you pay. No gifts, no helping out, no special favors. 2. I pay back the $5,000. Non-negotiable. The work is separate. 3. If at any point this feels like charity or like you expect something other than my professional opinion, I walk. No hard feelings, but I walk. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. This was crazy. You didn't give ultimatums to billionaires who were offering you a lifeline. You smiled and nodded and thanked God for the opportunity. But Chloe had learned the hard way that taking help that came with invisible strings was worse than drowning on your own. Leo's father had taught her that lesson thoroughly. I'll take care of you, Marcus had said. Right up until she got pregnant and he'd vanished like smoke, blocking her number and moving to another state. She wasn't going to be taken care of again. She was going to earn her way or not at all. Agreed. Chloe blinked. That was it? No pushback, no wounded ego, no lecture about looking a gift horse in the mouth? One condition from my side. There it was. The catch. You're honest with me. If something isn't working, you tell me directly. I don't have time for people who tell me what they think I want to hear. Chloe's shoulders relaxed slightly. That at least she could do. Deal. See you tomorrow at 2. She set her phone down and looked back at Leo, sleeping peacefully in his car seat, his tiny fist curled near his face. In the dim parking lot light, he looked impossibly fragile, impossibly perfect. Please let this work, she whispered. Please let this be real. Julian stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his office, watching the city lights sprawl beneath him like a circuit board, and tried to explain to himself what the hell he was doing. He'd spent the last 3 days having his team create a legitimate consulting program that hadn't existed a week ago. He'd had Rachel, his executive assistant, convert the small conference room on the executive floor into a nursing suite with a glider, changing table, and enough supplies to stock a daycare. He'd personally reviewed the redesigned prototype for the childcare app they'd been casually developing, turning it from a back-burner project into a priority initiative. All because a woman had accidentally texted him asking for $20. "The consultant arrives at 2 p.m., Rachel said from the doorway. "I've prepared the NDA and consulting contract. Standard terms, $200 hourly rate, minimum 10 hours per week, 30-day initial term with option to extend." "Make it $250, Julian said without turning around, "and add a clause for overtime if she needs it." "Julian," Rachel's tone was careful, "I've worked for you for 8 years. I've never seen you do this." "Do what?" "Personally recruit a consultant, renovate office space for someone's child, check your phone every 30 seconds. A pause. "Who is she?" Julian finally turned. Rachel stood with her tablet, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes knowing. Rachel had been with him since the early days, back when Blackwood Tech was 3 people in a rented office space, surviving on ramen and optimism. She'd seen him through the Caroline debacle, watched him systematically close off every part of himself that wasn't related to work. "She's someone who needs a chance," Julian said. "And we need her perspective." "Uh-huh." Rachel didn't sound convinced. "And the $5,000 wire transfer?" "How do you know about that?" "I monitor all transactions over $1,000 from your personal accounts. It's literally my job." Rachel tilted her head. "You sent $5,000 to a Chloe Evans 3 days ago. The same Chloe Evans who's arriving in..." She checked her watch. 6 hours. Julian turned back to the window. "Wrong number. She needed formula. I helped." "You don't help people. I donate millions to charity every year. That's tax strategy, not helping." Rachel's voice softened. "Julian, I'm not judging. I'm just worried. You don't do impulsive. This is very impulsive." She was right. Everything about this was antithetical to how Julian operated. He analyzed, calculated, strategized. He didn't make major business decisions based on a feeling in his chest when someone refused his money. He didn't create consulting positions for single mothers who texted him by mistake. But he also hadn't been able to stop thinking about Chloe Evans for 3 days straight. About her stubborn insistence on paying him back. About the exhaustion he could feel through her text messages, the bone-deep weariness of someone fighting just to keep their head above water. About the steel in her spine that wouldn't bend even when bending would have been easier. "Maybe I'm tired of everyone wanting me for my money," Julian said quietly. "Maybe I want to meet someone who wants nothing to do with it." Rachel was silent for a long moment. Then, her ground rules were interesting. "You read them. I monitor your messages too. It's literally my job, yes." Julian smiled slightly. "What did you think?" "I think she's either the world's best actress or exactly who she appears to be. And I think you're hoping desperately that it's the latter." Rachel moved to stand beside him at the window. "Be careful. You're not as protected as you think you are." "I'm not trying to be protected." "I know. That's what worries me." At 1:47 p.m. the next day, Rachel's voice came through the intercom. "Your consultant is here. Should I send her in?" Julian stood, straightening his tie out of habit, then loosening it again. He didn't want to seem too formal, or too casual, or too... God. When had he become this person? He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. He'd faced down hostile boards and corporate raiders. He'd built an empire through sheer force of will and strategic brilliance, and he was nervous about meeting someone for a consulting session. "Send her in," he said. The door opened. Julian had imagined this moment a dozen different ways over the past 3 days. He'd pictured Chloe Evans as tired but glamorous, or wounded but calculating, or any number of combinations that would either confirm his hope or justify his cynicism. He hadn't pictured this. She stood in his doorway in dark jeans and a simple blue sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup that he could see. She held a baby carrier in one hand and a diaper bag in the other, her shoulders squared like she was walking into battle. She had the kind of natural beauty that didn't need enhancement. Clear skin, dark eyes that missed nothing. Full lips pressed into a determined line. She also looked absolutely terrified. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice steady despite the fear he could see in her eyes. "I'm Chloe Evans. Thank you for this opportunity." Julian realized he'd been staring. He moved forward, extending his hand. "Julian, please, and thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm, brief, professional. She glanced around his office, taking in the minimalist decor, the wall of windows, the ridiculous square footage that came with being CEO. And he saw her jaw tighten slightly. "This is more than I expected," she said. "My office or the job?" "Both." She met his eyes directly. "I'm going to be honest with you, Julian. I almost didn't come. This feels too good to be true, and in my experience, when something feels too good to be true, it's because someone's lying." Julian felt something click into place in his chest. This was what had been missing from every interaction he'd had for years. Directness, honesty, no performance, no calculation, just truth. "I appreciate that," he said. "So let me be equally honest. I sent you that money because you reminded me of my mother 25 years ago. She was where you are, working multiple jobs, raising me alone, choosing between groceries and rent. Nobody helped us. I want to help you." Chloe's expression shifted. For a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. Then the steel returned. "I don't want to be helped. I want to work." "Then let's work." Julian gestured to the sitting area by the window. "Tell me about your experience as a working parent. What's the hardest part of your day?" They talked for 3 hours. Julian had intended a 1-hour meeting, maybe 2 at most. But Chloe's insights were sharp, detailed, brutally honest about the systems that failed parents like her. She talked about scheduling conflicts between jobs, about the nightmare of finding affordable childcare, about the apps and services that claimed to help, but were designed by people who'd never actually lived the problems they were trying to solve. Julian took notes, asked questions, found himself genuinely engaged in a way he hadn't been in meetings for months. Leo woke up twice. Each time, Chloe excused herself to the nursing room Rachel had prepared. Each time, Julian used the break to review his notes and marvel at how much genuine innovation was hidden in her observations. When she came back the second time, Leo awake and content in her arms, Julian made his decision. "I want to extend your contract," he said. 3 months initially, 20 hours a week minimum. We'll structure it around your other job schedules." Chloe's eyes widened. That's over $50,000. That's market rate for the value you're providing." "Julian." She said his name carefully, like she was testing it out. "Why are you really doing this?" He could lie. Give her corporate speak about user research and market development. But she'd asked for honesty, and he found he desperately wanted to give it to her. "Because in 3 hours, you've given me more genuine insight than I've gotten from a year of focus groups. Because you're exactly the kind of person I need to make sure we build something that actually helps instead of just making money." He paused. "And because you asked me for $20 and then got angry when I gave you more." Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? Chloe was quiet for a long moment, looking down at Leo. Julian could see her thinking, weighing, calculating her own risks. I need to add something to our agreement, she said finally. What's that? She looked up, and her eyes were absolutely serious. No sex before marriage. Julian blinked. Of all the things he'd expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. I'm sorry. You heard me. Chloe's cheeks flushed, but her voice stayed steady. I know how this looks. Single mother, broke, working for a billionaire. I know what people will assume. I know what you might expect, eventually. So I'm making it clear right now. That's not on the table. Not casually. Not as some kind of transaction. Not at all, unless there's a real commitment. If that's a problem, I'll walk right now. Julian stared at her. 3 months ago, if someone had told him a woman would sit in his office and preemptively establish a no-sex boundary, he would have laughed. The women in his world didn't erect boundaries. They demolished them, often in creative and obvious ways. But Chloe wasn't protecting herself from him. She was protecting herself, period. From assumptions, from situations she couldn't control, from losing her autonomy in an arrangement that already had an inherent power imbalance. It was the most sensible thing anyone had ever said to him. That's not a problem, Julian said. That's admirable, and I respect it completely. You're sure? Chloe, I offered you a consulting job because I need your professional perspective. Nothing more. Nothing less. He paused, then added with complete honesty. If something more ever develops, and I'm not saying it will, it'll be because we both want it, not because of this arrangement. You have my word. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the catch, the hidden expectation. Julian held her gaze, letting her look. Finally, she nodded. Okay, then I accept. 3 months, 20 hours a week. Excellent. Julian extended his hand again. Welcome aboard. This time, when their hands met, something sparked between them, brief, electric, undeniable. Julian saw Chloe's eyes widen slightly, saw her breath catch. Then she pulled away, adjusting Leo in her arms, rebuilding her walls. It was going to be a very interesting 3 months. Chloe had never been in a penthouse before Julian Blackwood invited her to his home office for an evening work session. I have a dinner meeting across town at 8, he'd explained. But I wanted to review the prototype updates with you first. We can do it at my place. It's closer than the office, and you won't have to navigate parking downtown. It made sense. It was logical. It was also the first time they'd be alone together outside of the office. And Chloe had spent the entire afternoon trying to convince herself it didn't matter. The past 2 weeks had been unexpected. Julian was nothing like she'd imagined a billionaire CEO would be. He listened more than he talked. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered details. Leo's feeding schedule, her shift times at the diner, her casual mention of wanting to finish her degree someday. He never made her feel stupid for not understanding the technical aspects of app development, instead explaining things clearly and valuing her real-world perspective over theoretical knowledge. He was also, annoyingly, very attractive. Not in the polished, forgettable way of the men in the Forbes photos, but in person, when he pushed his sleeves up and gestured while explaining something he was excited about. Or when he held Leo with surprising natural comfort while Chloe took notes. Or when he smiled, really smiled, at something she said. Chloe had been ignoring the attraction aggressively. She was good at ignoring things she couldn't afford to acknowledge. But now she was standing in his penthouse, watching the sun set over the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, and her heart was doing complicated things in her chest. Leo's down? Julian appeared from the kitchen with 2 glasses of water. Finally. Chloe had used the bedroom Julian had shown her, casually mentioning it was kept ready for his mother's visits, which somehow made it less intimidating. She'd nursed Leo and gotten him to sleep in the travel crib Julian had apparently ordered specifically for these evening sessions. He's been fighting sleep lately. Growth spurt? You've been reading the baby books I mentioned. I like to be informed. Julian handed her a water glass, their fingers brushing. That spark again, electric and immediate. They both pulled away quickly. So, Chloe said too brightly, moving to the dining table where Julian's laptop was set up. The prototype? They worked for an hour, reviewing the updated interface, with Chloe pointing out where the user flow felt counterintuitive or where the language felt too corporate. Julian took notes, asked questions, occasionally challenged her perspective in ways that made her think deeper. It felt like collaboration, like partnership, like something that went beyond boss and consultant into territory Chloe absolutely couldn't let herself think about. You're brilliant at this, Julian said, sitting back. You know that. Chloe felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm just telling you what doesn't work. You're seeing patterns that professional UX designers miss. You're thinking systematically about problems they treat as isolated issues. He met her eyes. You should finish your degree. Marketing, you said? That was the plan, before Leo. Chloe traced the condensation on her water glass. It feels impossible now. Why? Time, money, energy. Pick any combination. What if those weren't obstacles? Chloe looked up sharply. Julian, I'm not offering to pay for it, he said quickly, holding up his hands. I know you'd refuse. I'm saying, what if you could make it work? What would that look like? Chloe opened her mouth to dismiss it, then stopped. When had she last let herself actually think about this? Not just dream vaguely about someday, but actually plan. Online courses, she said slowly. Part-time, maybe 2 classes a semester. It would take longer, but I could fit it around Leo's schedule. Registration's still open for spring semester. Julian, just thinking out loud. His eyes held hers. You have options, Chloe. You're not stuck. Something cracked in her chest. Not broke. Cracked, like ice under pressure. Letting light through. She realized she'd been holding herself so tightly for so long, just trying to survive, that she'd forgotten to imagine thriving. Why do you care? She whispered. Julian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his expression serious. Because you remind me that there's more to life than quarterly earnings and market share. Because you're real in a way I'd forgotten people could be. Because... He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before I became who I am. The air between them shifted, became charged, heavy with all the things they weren't saying. Chloe saw the exact moment Julian recognized what was happening, saw him start to pull back. She kissed him. She didn't decide to do it. Her body made the decision somewhere below conscious thought. Leaning across the small space between them, pressing her lips to his before her brain could catalog all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Julian froze for half a second. Then he was kissing her back, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. The kiss was soft, exploratory, tasting like possibility and risk and everything Chloe couldn't afford to want. Then reality crashed back in. Chloe gasped and pulled away, nearly knocking over her water glass. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I shouldn't have. Chloe, no sex before marriage. That's what I said. That's the rule. She stood up, needing distance, needing air. I made a rule, and then You kissed me, that's all. Julian's voice was careful. It's not a violation of anything. It is if it leads somewhere else. Does it have to? Chloe wrapped her arms around herself. Her lips still tingled. Her heart was racing. She wanted to kiss him again so badly it physically hurt. Yes, because I don't do casual. I can't. Leo needs stability, security. I need to know I'm not going to fall for someone who's going to leave. What makes you think I'd leave? Because everyone does. The words came out harsher than she intended. Leo's father promised me the world. Then I got pregnant and he vanished. I'm not doing that again. I'm not falling for someone unless I know they're staying. Julian stood too, but didn't approach her. What if I want to stay? You don't know that. We barely know each other. This could be. She gestured helplessly between them. Just attraction. Chemistry. It doesn't mean anything. What if it does? Julian, stop. Chloe felt tears prick her eyes. I work for you. You have billions of dollars and I have negative dollars. This can't happen, not like this. Then how? I don't know. The frustration burst out of her. I don't know, okay? All I know is that I can't afford to make another mistake. Leo deserves better than a mother who falls for the wrong guy because he's kind to her for 5 minutes. Is that what you think this is? I think you're a good man who feels sorry for me. And I think I'm lonely and overwhelmed, and you're the first person who's seen me as more than just a waitress or a cleaning lady or a charity case in so long that I don't trust my own judgment anymore. Silence fell between them. Chloe could hear her own ragged breathing, could feel the tears on her cheeks that she hadn't realized had fallen. I don't feel sorry for you, Julian said quietly. I'm in awe of you. There's a difference. Chloe closed her eyes. I need to go. This was a mistake. Don't leave like this. I have to. She moved toward the bedroom where Leo was sleeping. I'll email you my notes on the prototype. We can schedule the next session back at the office. Chloe. She stopped at the bedroom door, not turning around. I'm not quitting. I need this job too much. But we need boundaries. Professional ones. No more evening sessions. No more private conversations. Just work. If that's what you need. It is. She gathered Leo and her things, moving quickly, not letting herself look at Julian's face, because she knew if she did, she'd break. She'd stay. She'd let herself fall into the warmth and safety he represented, and then she'd shatter when it inevitably ended. In the elevator down, Leo warm and sleeping against her chest, Chloe finally let herself cry. Not because the kiss had been wrong, but because it had been so right. And that terrified her more than anything. Julian's POV. Julian stood at his window for 2 hours after Chloe left, trying to understand what had just happened. He'd been in relationships. He'd felt attraction, affection, even something approximating love once, before Caroline had taught him exactly how conditional that emotion could be. He knew what it felt like to want someone. This was different. This was waking up from a decade-long sleep and realizing you'd been living in black and white, and now there was color everywhere, and it was overwhelming and exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Chloe had kissed him. Then she'd run away. And Julian couldn't blame her for either action. He'd spent 2 weeks telling himself this was just a professional arrangement, that his interest in Chloe was purely about her insights and perspective. He'd been lying to himself. He'd been drawn to her from that first desperate text message, drawn to her authenticity and strength and the way she refused to bend even when bending would have made her life easier. He wanted her. Not just physically, though God, yes, that too. He wanted her in his life, in his space, in his future. He wanted to watch her finish her degree and build her career. He wanted to teach Leo to throw a baseball. He wanted mundane, ordinary, impossible things that he'd never wanted before. And she was right to run. Because how did you build something real when the power dynamic was this unbalanced? When he could solve all her problems with a wire transfer, but she was fighting to maintain her dignity and independence? When she worked for him and depended on him and couldn't afford to trust whether her feelings were genuine or just gratitude and desperation dressed up as attraction? Julian's phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. I assume the meeting went well since you've been staring out the window for 2 hours without moving. How do you know I'm staring out the window? Security cameras, I worry. How's the consultant? Julian smiled despite everything. Complicated? Good. You need complicated. You've been simple for too long. He typed back, what if I screw this up? Then you'll be human like the rest of us. Novel experience for you. Julian set down his phone and made a decision. If Chloe needed boundaries and time, he'd give her that. He'd give her space to see this job as real, to build her confidence and security, to know she had options and choices that didn't depend on him. And then, if she still wanted him, if this was real, he'd fight for her properly. Not as her employer or her benefactor, but as an equal. Somehow, he just had to be patient enough to let her get there. Julian had built an empire through patience and strategy. Surely he could apply those same skills to the most important project of his life. He pulled out his phone and texted Chloe. Take the weekend. Come back Monday when you're ready. We'll keep it professional. You have my word. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Thank you. That was all. But it was enough. For now. Julian looked out at the city lights and allowed himself to hope. The professional boundaries lasted exactly 3 weeks before they started eroding in small, inevitable ways. It started with Julian texting her articles about early childhood development, then asking her opinion on a charity initiative for working parents, then casual conversations after meetings that stretched longer than they should, both of them finding excuses to linger. Chloe told herself it was fine. They were colleagues, friends even. The kiss had been an aberration, never repeated, never mentioned. She was lying to herself, and she knew it. Tonight, she'd stayed late to review marketing materials for the app launch. It was past 9 when Julian knocked on the conference room door. You're still here? He held 2 containers of Thai food. I ordered too much. Hungry? Chloe should have said no, should have gone home. Instead, she found herself nodding. They ate in comfortable silence, Leo asleep in his carrier beside her chair. Outside the windows, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. Can I ask you something? Julian said suddenly. Sure. Why did you say yes to this job? The real reason. Chloe set down her fork. They'd maintained surface-level pleasantness for weeks. This felt like stepping off solid ground into deep water. Because I was drowning, she said quietly. I had $53 in my bank account and a son who needed me to be more than I was capable of being on 4 hours of sleep and 2 minimum wage jobs. You threw me a life preserver. I grabbed it. That's not weakness. It feels like it sometimes. Chloe met his eyes. I spent my whole childhood watching my dad bail on my mom financially, emotionally, every way that mattered. I promised myself I'd never need anyone that way. And then I had Leo, and suddenly I needed everything from everyone, and I hated it. I hated feeling helpless. You're not helpless. You're resourceful. I texted a wrong number begging for formula money, Julian. That's not resourcefulness. That's desperation. You were willing to do whatever it took to feed your son. That's love. Julian was quiet for a moment. My mother cleaned houses. She worked herself into exhaustion every single day to keep us fed. When I was 11, I came home and found her passed out on the kitchen floor. She'd been working 3 jobs and hadn't eaten in 2 days because she'd spent her last $20 on my school supplies. Chloe's chest tightened. Julian, I built this company so she'd never have to work again. So she could have everything she denied herself for years. He looked at her. When I saw your text, I saw her. I saw every parent who's breaking themselves into pieces trying to hold their family together. I wanted to help because nobody helped us when we needed it. Is that what I am to you? A way to fix the past? No. Julian's voice was fierce. You're... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. You're the first person in 10 years who's made me feel like myself again. Not Julian Blackwood, CEO, just Julian. The kid who used to fix computers in his bedroom and dream about changing the world instead of just making money from it. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Chloe's chest. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. I see you, she whispered. Not the net worth or the Forbes covers. You. And I like what I see. Julian turned his hand over, threading their fingers together. I'm terrified of this. Me too. Your rule still stands. Chloe squeezed his hand. But maybe we can figure out what this is. Slowly. Carefully. I can do slowly. Julian's thumb traced circles on her palm, sending sparks up her arm. I'm very patient when it matters. They sat like that, hands intertwined, until Leo stirred and broke the spell. But something had shifted. Some barrier had come down. Julian was reviewing quarterly reports when Rachel appeared in his doorway, with an expression he'd learned to dread. What did you do? She asked. I need more context. Chloe's business proposal. The one she mentioned to you last week about creating care packages for new parents in low-income areas. Rachel held up her tablet. You didn't just approve funding. You created an entire subsidiary company, filed the LLC paperwork, established a board, and appointed her as CEO. She has a brilliant idea. I provided the infrastructure to execute it. Julian. Rachel sat down across from him. You essentially just gave her $1 million company. I invested in a viable social enterprise. Different thing. Does she know? Not yet. I'm telling her today. Rachel shook her head. You're going to terrify her. This is too much. It's not a gift. It's an investment. She'll run the company, make the decisions. I'm just the capital. You're in love with her. Julian's hand stilled on his keyboard. He looked up at Rachel, who was watching him with the expression of someone who'd just confirmed their suspicions. Don't bother denying it. You reorganized your entire schedule around her consulting hours. You smile at your phone. You turned down 3 charity gala invitations because they conflicted with your standing Thursday meetings with her. Rachel's voice softened. I'm not judging. I'm just saying be careful. She's not like the others. If you break her heart, you'll break yours too. Julian sat back in his chair. Was it love? He'd loved Caroline once, or thought he had. That had felt like addiction, intoxicating, consuming, ultimately destructive. This felt different, steadier, like coming home after a long trip to find everything exactly where it should be. I won't hurt her, he said. You might not mean to. But Julian, you have to let her choose this. Really choose it, not feel obligated or grateful or indebted. That's why I haven't told her how I feel. Maybe you should. I don't understand. Chloe stared at the document spread across Julian's desk. This is a company, a real company. Yes. Julian leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully. Evans Care Initiative. You'd be CEO. I'd be primary investor and board advisor. But operational decisions would be entirely yours. Chloe's hands trembled as she picked up the business plan. Her business plan, the one she'd mentioned casually over coffee 2 weeks ago. now transformed into something professional and real and terrifying. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's exactly enough. You have a vision for how to actually help new parents instead of just profiting from their desperation. The market research supports it. The social impact potential is enormous, and you're the perfect person to lead it. I don't have an MBA. I haven't even finished my bachelor's degree. You have something better, lived experience and genuine understanding of the problem." Julian stood, coming around the desk. "Chloe, I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing it because it's a smart investment in a brilliant idea and a capable leader. People will say I slept my way into this. People always say something. Do you care?" Did she? Chloe looked at the documents again. The professional branding, the detailed financial projections, the partnership agreements with hospitals and community centers. This wasn't charity. This was real. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. "What if you succeed?" Chloe met his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you deserve a chance to build something. Because your idea could genuinely help thousands of families. Because..." Julian stopped, and Chloe saw something raw flash across his face. "Because I believe in you. Completely." The weight of his faith was almost crushing. Chloe had spent so long just trying to survive that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone believe she could thrive. "I need time to think about this," she said. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands." But as Chloe gathered her things, she already knew her answer. She was terrified. But she was also excited in a way she hadn't felt since before Leo was born. This could change everything. Her life, her son's future, her sense of who she was and what she was capable of. Julian had given her more than money or opportunity. He'd given her back her dreams. 3 days later, Julian was in a budget meeting when his phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. "Yes, I'm saying yes. When can we start?" He excused himself from the meeting, ignoring the startled looks from his CFO and board members, and called her immediately. "You're sure?" he asked when she answered. "I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure." He could hear the smile in her voice. "Julian, I thank you. I know you said it's an investment, but it's more than that. You're giving me a chance to be more than I was. You were always more. I just helped you see it. I want to take you to dinner, to celebrate, my treat." Julian smiled. "Your treat?" "I got my first paycheck from the company. I can afford one nice dinner." She paused. "Is that okay? Or is that crossing a line?" They'd been carefully navigating boundaries for 2 months, each touch carefully measured, each private moment fraught with awareness of what they weren't saying. This felt like deliberately stepping over that line. "I think we crossed the line a while ago," Julian said quietly. "We've just been pretending we didn't." Silence on the other end. Then, "Saturday night? My mom can watch Leo." Saturday's perfect. Chloe should have known better than to believe in fairy tales. She was getting ready for dinner, actually excited for the first time in months, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Is this Chloe Evans?" A woman's voice, cultured and cold. "Yes?" "This is Caroline Ashworth. I think we should talk about Julian Blackwood." Chloe's blood went cold. Caroline Ashworth, Julian's ex-fiancée, the woman who'd, according to every article Chloe had found, nearly destroyed him. "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Don't you? You're the new project, aren't you? The charity case he's currently obsessed with." Caroline's laugh was sharp. "Let me guess. Wrong number text, some sob story, and suddenly he's your white knight?" Chloe couldn't breathe. "How did you—" "Because it's what he does, darling. Julian collects broken things, He fixes them, feels good about himself, and then moves on when someone more interesting comes along. A pause. Or did you actually think you were special? That a billionaire fell for a single mother with nothing to offer? Stop. I'm trying to help you. He'll build you up, make you dependent on him, and then when he gets bored, and he will get bored, he'll discard you. Except unlike me, you have a child to worry about. Can you really afford to risk your son's stability on Julian's savior complex? You don't know anything about us. I know he created a company for you. I know he's paying you 6 figures for a consulting job that didn't exist before you. I know you're completely financially dependent on him now. Caroline's voice turned almost pitying. What happens when he's done playing hero? You lose everything: the job, the company, the security. And your son pays the price. Chloe ended the call with shaking hands. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, the new dress she'd bought with her first real paycheck, the makeup she'd carefully applied, the hope she'd let herself feel. Was Caroline right? Had she been so desperate for security that she'd missed the signs? Julian had swept into her life and transformed it completely in less than 3 months. That wasn't normal. That wasn't real. Her phone buzzed. Julian. On my way. Can't wait to see you. Chloe looked at the message. Thought about the company that wouldn't exist without him. The consulting job that he'd created specifically for her. The way he'd solved every problem with money and power and resources she'd never have on her own. She thought about Leo, finally settled and stable, and what would happen when Julian inevitably moved on to his next project. She couldn't do this. She couldn't risk her son's future on a relationship that was built on such an unstable foundation. Julian knew something was wrong the moment Chloe opened her door. She was dressed for dinner, but her eyes were red, her jaw tight. What happened? He asked immediately. I can't do this. Her voice was flat. Any of this. The dinner, the company, whatever this is between us, I'm done. Chloe. Caroline called me. Julian felt ice flood his veins. What did she say? That I'm your project, your charity case. That you'll get bored and move on and I'll lose everything. Chloe's voice cracked. And she's right, Julian. You've built my entire life around you. My job, my company, my income, it all depends on you. If you walk away, I have nothing. I'm not walking away. You don't know that. We barely know each other. This all happened so fast. 3 months ago, I didn't know you existed. And now my entire future is tied to whether you decide to keep being interested in me? She shook her head. I can't do that to Leo. I can't build his security on something this unstable. It's not unstable. Chloe, Julian stopped himself. He wanted to tell her he loved her, that this was real, that he'd never felt this way about anyone. But she was right. It had been fast, intense, overwhelming. Would she even believe him? You what? She demanded. You care about me? You're fascinated by me? Until when, Julian? Until I'm not broken anymore? Until fixing me stops being fulfilling? That's not what this is. Then what is it? Explain to me how this isn't just you playing savior with someone who was desperate enough to accept. Julian felt something crack in his chest. Is that really what you think? That everything I've done, everything we've shared, is just me feeling sorry for you? I don't know what to think anymore. Tears streamed down Chloe's face. I want to believe this is real. But Caroline's right. I'm completely dependent on you now. And that terrifies me more than being broke ever did. So, what are you saying? I'm saying I need to walk away before it's too late. Before Leo gets attached. Before I fall any harder for someone who might just be in love with the idea of saving me. Chloe, please. I'll finish out the consulting contract. We'll keep the company arrangement professional. But whatever this personal thing is between us, it's over. It has to be. She stepped back, starting to close the door. Julian put his hand against it, not forcing it open but stopping its movement. "I love you," he said. The words came out raw, desperate, nothing like the careful confession he'd planned. "I'm in love with you. Not because you needed saving, not because of some savior complex, but because you're brilliant and strong and real in a way no one else in my life has ever been. I love how you refuse to bend. I love how you fight for your son. I love that you challenged me and pushed back and made me remember why I started building things in the first place." Chloe was crying harder now. "That's not enough." "Then what is?" "I don't know. But I know I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." She closed the door gently but firmly. Julian stood in the hallway, his hands still raised. His heart in pieces. He'd built an empire. He'd transformed industries. He'd solved impossible problems through sheer will and strategic brilliance. And he couldn't fix this. 2 weeks later, Julian had spent 14 days trying to respect Chloe's boundaries. She showed up for consulting sessions, professional and distant. She sent updates about the company launch, her emails perfectly polite and utterly devoid of warmth. She wouldn't meet his eyes. He was dying by inches. Rachel found him at midnight in his office, staring at his phone. "Go home, Julian. Can't sleep anyway. Then do something about it." Rachel sat down across from him. "You're miserable. She's miserable. This is ridiculous." She asked for space. She asked for certainty. There's a difference. Rachel leaned forward. Caroline got in her head. Made her doubt everything. "You told Chloe you loved her, then let her walk away. What kind of message does that send? That I respect her choices? No. It sends the message that you're not willing to fight for her." Rachel's voice was uncharacteristically sharp. "You've built a billion-dollar company through sheer determination. You've fought hostile takeovers and market crashes and every obstacle imaginable. But when it comes to the woman you love, you just give up." "I'm not giving up. I'm giving her space to what? Convince herself she was right? That you were just playing hero?" Rachel shook her head. "Julian, that woman walked away because she's terrified. She's been abandoned before. She's protecting herself and her son in the only way she knows how. And you're letting her believe her fears are justified." Julian looked at his assistant, his friend. "What am I supposed to do?" "Prove her wrong. Show her this is real. Show her you're not going anywhere." Rachel stood. "And for God's sake, do it in a way that doesn't involve money. She doesn't need another grand gesture. She needs you." Chloe was exhausted. Leo had been up half the night teething, and she'd spent the other half staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about Julian. She'd done the right thing. She knew she had. Protecting Leo meant protecting herself from falling for someone who might leave. It didn't matter that every cell in her body screamed that she'd made a mistake. It didn't matter that Julian's voice saying, "I love you," replayed in her head on an endless loop. She was loading Leo into his car seat for a doctor's appointment when she saw Julian sitting on the steps of her apartment building. He looked terrible, exhausted, rumpled, his usual polish completely absent. When he saw her, he stood. "What are you doing here?" Chloe asked, her heart hammering. "Waiting for you. I've been here since 6. "Julian, I know you asked for space. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." He moved toward her, stopping a careful distance away. Caroline was wrong about all of it. You don't know what she said. I can guess. That I collect broken things. That this is a savior complex. That I'll get bored and move on. Julian's voice was steady. "She's wrong, Chloe. You're not broken. You were never broken. You were surviving impossible circumstances with grace and strength. And I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just gave you resources you should have had all along. Chloe's throat tightened. Julian, I'm not done. He took a breath. You said you're dependent on me, and you're right. But it goes both ways. I'm dependent on you too. You make me better. You make me remember why any of this matters. Before you, I was successful and empty, and convinced that was all I deserved. You showed me there was more. That's not the same thing. You don't need me to survive. No, I need you to live. There's a difference. Julian's eyes held hers. I love you. Not because you needed help. Not because fixing your problems made me feel good about myself. I love you because you're fierce and principled and you fight for what matters. I love your terrible jokes and how you sing to Leo off-key. I love that you refuse to let me win arguments just because I'm signing your paycheck. I love that you make me work for every inch of ground. Tears were streaming down Chloe's face. I'm scared. I know, I'm scared too. Julian moved closer. But Chloe, I'm not Marcus. I'm not your father. I'm not leaving. Not tomorrow, not next month, not ever. And I'm willing to prove that however long it takes. How? However you need me to. Julian reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope. I've restructured the company. Evan's Care Initiative is now entirely independent. Separate board, separate funding, zero connection to Blackwood Tech. You own 60%. A venture capital firm I have no association with owns the other 40%. If I disappeared tomorrow, you'd still have everything you've built. Chloe took the envelope with shaking hands. You separated it? Completely. Your job, your company, your income. None of it depends on me anymore. You're not trapped. You can walk away from me and keep everything you've earned. Julian's voice cracked slightly. I don't want you to walk away, but I need you to know you can. That staying is a choice, not a necessity. Chloe opened the envelope, scanning the legal documents. He'd done exactly what he said. Severed every financial connection between them except a personal loan for the initial $5,000, with her agreed payment plan still in place. He'd given up control, given up leverage, given up every advantage. Why? She whispered. Because I love you more than I need to control the outcome. Because you deserve to choose this freely. Julian stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking for a chance to earn that trust. One day at a time, for as long as it takes. Chloe looked at Julian, really looked at him, at the exhaustion in his eyes and the vulnerability in his posture and the way he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. This wasn't the polished billionaire from the Forbes covers. This was just Julian, the man who'd sent her $5,000 for baby formula, the man who believed in her dreams before she believed in them herself, the man who'd given up control rather than keep her trapped, the man she loved. I've been so stupid, she said. Julian's eyes widened. What? I was so scared of being dependent that I couldn't see the truth. Chloe set down the envelope, moving into his space. You're right. It goes both ways. I need you too. Not your money, not your resources. You. The person who listens when I talk, who remembers the small things, who holds Leo like he's precious, who looks at me like you're everything. Julian finished softly. Because you are. Chloe kissed him. Not the desperate, panicked kiss from 2 months ago, but something deeper. A promise, a choice, a beginning. Julian's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Chloe felt something slot into place in her chest. This was home, not his penthouse or her apartment or any physical space. but here, in his arms, where she felt safe and seen and valued. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I want forever with you," he said quietly. "You and Leo. I want to build a life together. A real partnership, not me fixing your problems or you being grateful. Just us. Equal. Together. That's what I want too." Chloe pulled back to meet his eyes. "But Julian, we need to do this right. For Leo's sake. I can't bring someone into his life casually. I don't want casual. I want permanent." Julian reached up, cupping her face gently. "Marry me." Chloe's breath caught. "What?" "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I've never been more certain of anything." Julian's thumb brushed her cheekbone. "I want to be Leo's father. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build something real and lasting and true. So marry me, Chloe. Not because you need me, but because you want me. Because we're better together." "Yes." The word came out without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Julian kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring everything into it. Love and relief and joy and promise. Chloe kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, her heart singing. When they finally separated, both grinning like idiots, Chloe laughed. "I have a doctor's appointment for Leo in 20 minutes. I'll drive you. Then you're coming home with us after." Nothing could stop me. Julian stood at the altar, watching Chloe walk toward him, and couldn't breathe. They'd kept the wedding small, immediate family only, in his mother's garden. Chloe wore a simple white dress, held Leo on her hip, and smiled at Julian like he'd hung the moon. His mother was crying. Rachel was crying. Julian might have been crying too, but he was too focused on Chloe to notice. When she reached him, she handed Leo to Julian's mother and took his hands. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself." Julian grinned. "Ready?" So ready. The ceremony was brief. Julian barely heard it, too focused on Chloe's face, on the way she looked at him with absolute certainty. When it came time for vows, he spoke from the heart. "Chloe, you taught me that love isn't about saving or being saved. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I choose you, today and every day after. You and Leo, you're my family, my home, my everything." Chloe's voice was thick with tears. "Julian, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You gave me back my dreams. I choose you too. Not because I need you, but because I want you. Because you're my partner, my equal, my love. Today and always. You may kiss your bride." Julian did thoroughly to applause and laughter and Leo's confused gurgling from his grandmother's arms. They spent their wedding night in Julian's penthouse. Their penthouse now. Leo slept peacefully in the nursery Julian had decorated with Chloe's input. And for the first time since that night 2 months ago, there were no barriers between them. Julian carried Chloe to their bedroom, laying her gently on the bed. "You're sure?" he asked, even though he could see the answer in her eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything." Chloe pulled him down to her. "You're my husband now, mine." "Yours," Julian agreed, and kissed her. What followed was tender and passionate and equal. Two people completely in sync, giving and taking in perfect balance. Julian worshipped every inch of her, and Chloe met him touch for touch, kiss for kiss, building to something that felt sacred. When they finally came together, it was with whispered promises and shared breath and a rightness that brought tears to both their eyes. "I love you," Chloe gasped against his mouth. "I love you," Julian answered, and showed her with his body what his words couldn't fully express. Afterward, wrapped in each other, Chloe traced patterns on Julian's chest. "Worth the wait?" she asked. "Worth everything." Julian kissed her forehead. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being stubborn, for making me work for this. For teaching me that the best things can't be bought or controlled. They can only be earned." Chloe looked up at him, her eyes soft. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on us. Never. I'm too stubborn too, remember?" Julian smiled. "We're going to be an impossible couple." "Good. I wouldn't have it any other way." 1 year later, Chloe stood in the conference room of Evans Care Initiative headquarters, looking at the presentation her team had just delivered. In 1 year, they'd helped over 5,000 families. They'd partnered with 50 hospitals. They'd changed lives. And it was hers. Really, truly hers. "Incredible work, everyone," she said to her staff. "Take the rest of the day. You've earned it." As the team filed out, chatting excitedly about their success, Julian appeared in the doorway with Leo, now 18 months old and walking like a tiny drunk person. "Mama." Leo toddled toward her, and Chloe scooped him up, kissing his chubby cheeks. "What are you two doing here?" "Thought you might want company for lunch." Julian moved to her side, wrapping an arm around her waist, pulling them both close. "How'd the presentation go?" "We're expanding to 10 more cities next quarter." Chloe couldn't keep the pride from her voice. "We're actually making a difference, Julian." "You're making a difference. You did this." He kissed her temple. "I'm so damn proud of you." Chloe leaned into him, Leo babbling happily between them, and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it was almost overwhelming. 1.5 years ago, she'd been sitting in a parking lot, broke and desperate, accidentally texting a stranger for help. Now she had a husband who loved her, a son who was thriving, a company that mattered, and a future that felt limitless. "What are you thinking?" Julian asked softly. "That I'm glad I hit the wrong number that night." Julian laughed. "Best wrong number I ever received." "Da-da!" Leo grabbed Julian's nose, and they both laughed. As they walked out together, her little family, her impossible dream made real. Chloe looked back at the logo on the wall. Evans Care Initiative, her name, her vision, her proof that she was more than she'd ever believed possible. And Julian beside her, not as her savior, but as her partner, her equal, her love. "Hey," Julian said as they reached the elevator. "I know it's early, but how do you feel about giving Leo a sibling?" Chloe looked at her husband, at his hopeful expression and the way he held their son with such natural tenderness, and felt her heart expand impossibly further. "I think that sounds perfect," she said. Julian kissed her, slow and sweet and full of promise. Leo squealed with delight, trapped between them, trying to join the kiss with wet, sloppy enthusiasm. And Chloe thought, this was the happily ever after she'd stopped believing in. Not perfect, but real. Not rescue, but partnership. Not dependency, but choice. She'd texted the wrong number, but she'd found exactly the right man. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you enjoyed the journey. If you did, please subscribe and leave a comment. I love getting to know you better. And be on the lookout for our next story of strength, perseverance, and love. It should be on your feed very soon.